Welcome back, guys. It's one more episode of I Wish, that's me, tutorial on RxSwift, not Viper. This time I'm going to do something on RxSwift. I've been using RxSwift for a while, and it's been an interesting journey where the way I'd been thinking about programming has drastically changed because of the way I've been using RxSwift reactive programming, if you call it. So I just want to show you one interesting thing which can be implemented in your project where you can send out signals, let's say from a collection of items in an easier way. It's using something called as Observable.merge. So let's get started. I'll show you how to do that. So let me create a single view app. Simple one. Let's call this RxSwift merge sample, a simple one. And let me just quickly go and create a layout. What I'm trying to achieve here, it's more like let me first add a stack view. I'll keep explaining what I'm trying to do here. It's just that I'll have a stack view where I'll just add an array of buttons, but that through program it'll be programmatically added. So let me add this first thing first. Let me add this stack view, and then okay, I don't need this button, and one more label. So this is something which will start receiving signals from a collection of buttons. So the way I'll be creating the buttons is a little interesting. So let's go to that in a bit. So that's my button. Maybe I'll just add a width and a height and then center it horizontally. Have it line to bottom, and then maybe this vertical spacing. That's it. So that's my button and the stack view where I'll be adding all of that's my label and the stack view where I'll be adding all the buttons. Let me just quickly grab these. Let me call it stack view container and the label as label button value. So this is where it will receive the values. How those now, let me clear this. That's it. So I have the layout ready. I don't need to come back again here, maybe once more, because let me just distribute the whole thing equally and maybe add a spacing of 10. So that's it. So I'm done with this layout. Let me go back to my view controller, and then let's create a custom button. Okay, even before that, okay, let me create the custom button, something funky. Let me call it funky button, and button funky button. So that in turn will inherit from UI button. So that's more like a custom button. Let it implement UI kit. Okay, that's done. And then just let's overwrite some stuff. Overwrite what? Does not give me override. Okay, it's more like required override. Then let's pass a fatal error there. Let's call it it's not implemented. And the other one, I'll just keep it as is for the time being. I'll revisit this because I need to pass something here. So until then, let's do that later. It's asking for init again. Let's do a fatal error there. Okay, let's call super.init. That does not give you any errors. I guess that will do. Build. Needs a parameter. So let's go back to that later. Let me just create a view model. So this whole funky button view model. So this button will be receiving a view model to configure itself. So that's the whole idea. Funky button view model. And let me also create a protocol related to that, which we will pass to the funky item view presentable. So that's my thing. So what all things can a button have? Let's all configure using this. So let me just make a background color for the button. Let me call it UI color. Maybe it requires foundation. No, it's not asking. It's okay then. Get then button needs a title, so that can be a string. Need not be optional at all, because we be passing a initial value. Undeclared type, so we need import foundation. Still, oh, it's asking for UI kit. Okay. And then I'm done. I need to implement this funky button view presentable here. So title, let's initialize. Background color can be, let me just pass some value to that. UI color dot maybe blue. So that's my funky button. And let's have an init for that, where I'll pass the title required, and it'll set the new title here. So that's it. That's my funky button. One more thing that we need to start doing now is to grab RxSwift. So before that, let's init a pod here for this project. And this one, then let's call pod init, which will create you the pod file. Let's open that, and then let's add the pod required for RxSwift. It's taking a while. Let me go back and grab it from some other file. Okay, this does not have pod. This definitely has. Okay, this has. Maybe we will need Rx version 4 here. Let's do that. Grab 4.0. Then save it, do a pod install. That's it. You have the pod ready now. Let's close this, and then here's my project. Mod sample, open the workspace. And now I have the project workspace open. Let me include, so I have a funky button view model and a funky button. So one more thing I need here is that this needs to have something to propagate the button tap event. For that, let's do something. Let's include, I think, Rx, we need to compile it once. Okay, this we need to tackle. Before that, let me just include Rx, import RxSwift, RxCocoa, and then, okay, Cocoa is not needed here. So Swift, and then where PublishSubject, which let's call it as funky tap. PublishSubject. PublishSubject is nothing but it's an observable which can actually send out signals. So that's pretty much what it does. Let me pass a string there. So it can also carry some value. That's why I'm passing a string to that. It's more like a function where you can pass a parameter as well. So whenever it somewhere else, this can be subscribed to, and as well as somewhere it can send out values through this published subjects, which I can show you in a bit. So let me do that in a bit. So let me initialize this. So each and every this view model will have a published subject instance available. So that's my funky button view model. So it says does not conform, but it does. It has conformed to it now. So my funky button has a published subject now. Let me go back to the button where I will pass this view model. We call it funky button view presentable. So I'm just passing the protocol instead of the whole class, and let me have the view model instance being grabbed here as a reference. So same thing, and then I'll just call self.viewModel is equal to view model. That's it. So should accept still requires something required in it. Passed it. What else do you need? Okay, it requires to have a frame which we need to pass. Let it be a 0 frame. So that's, I guess we'll resolve it. But self.viewModel not initialized, it says. So guess that'll do. Let me go back to, so as we have the funky button configured now. Also need to do some stuff there where I can set the values. So let's say if I say self.background color, this is the color of this funky button, which we can actually configure using the view model. Here I can just call this view model.background color, which we have right now set as blue. So it'll take this value and get configured. The next thing is to bind it to the tap event. So for that, let's do this import RxCocoa. That's done. Then self.rx is now available for this control, and all we need to do is tap.bind it to this control event. So let's use the bind event where we pass the view model dot this publish subject, and it'll just propagate the value from here, which can be, in this case, let's say if I am tapping on this button, let me just send the title so it's received at the other end. So all I need to do is just grab the self view model dot title. So that's what I am sending whenever a tap happens for this control. Also, let me just create dispose back so that this object is disposed whenever the init happens. So for that we need import RxSwift. That's done now. And then the dispose bag. We have the dispose bag, and then I'll have to just call disposed by dispose bag. So that's it. My binding is done for this. So whenever let's say a tap is done on the button, it will send out a funky button publish subject on next the title value, which we need to now subscribe to. So that's the next step. So we are ready with the button. Let's go back to the view controller where we need to start loading the buttons here. So for that let's go back to this view model. Let's create one more view model for the whole of this view. We need a view model where this array needs to be represented. So for that, let's create something. Maybe here itself I can create it. We call a class. I'll call it funky home view model. So that's my home screen maybe, and then create a protocol funky home view presentable, and it'll have an array of funky buttons where we call it funky items. Maybe I'll call it funky items, and then it should be an array of funky button view presentable. So funky home view presentable has an array of funky button view presentable. I hope I'm not confusing you guys, but then this is pretty simple. When I start configuring, you will see what will happen there. So let this implement this funky home view presentable so that I can create an instance and instantiate that, and within the init let me just create some buttons. First button, maybe let's call it 1. This is button 1, where I'll instantiate these objects, funky button view models, which will ask for a title. So let me just this is my first object, funky button view model, asking for a title 1. Then maybe I'll create 5 or 6. So let me call 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Similarly, maybe just grab this here, 2, 3. These are the titles. 4, 5, 6. Pretty simple. Maybe I'll capitalize it. Okay, uppercase later, but let me add it to the array now. So I have the funky items dot append as a sequence. I'll just pass 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all of these items are now configured in the view model. So when you create an instance of this funky home view model, you have this array available already. So that's what I'm going to do right now in this view controller where everything started. Let me create a view model for this. It's called funky home view model. I'll create an instance itself here for this. So this view controller has a view model now called funky home view model. So in the view read load, I guess it's not pretty complex. Everything is compiling now. So when I am loading this screen, I'll be looping through the funky items funky view model. So that's my funky view model, which will configure each and every button. So whenever it finds that there is a funky view model, it will start creating a funky button for that. Funky is nothing but fancy. I'm just thinking funky is fancy. So it asks for a view model so that it can get auto configured. So we have it here. So whenever it identifies or whenever the funky items gets iterated, then it finds if there is a funky view model, which is this array. Anyway, we know that there are 6 array items, so it needs to configure 6 funky buttons using this. So you will get this. It's already instantiating and creating this button using this view model. That's done now. All that we need to do is add it to the stack view container as add arrange stack view item, and then funky button is ready for you. Now it's added. So let's see what will happen now. Before that, let me also put a print here so that we know that a funky button with title view model dot title is tapped. So we know that whenever this tap is happening, we'll get to know that this is happening, but we have not yet subscribed to these taps. So the whole idea is at the end of it, whenever a tap happens, the label which we have added here, this one, whatever we had here, that will get that start receiving that title value and it'll start showing it. So that's the whole idea I'm trying to implement, and you try to implement using an approach like observable.merge. So that's the whole thing. Let's see whether things are working or whether it is now configuring the buttons. Yeah, so we have the buttons, just that it has not received the title. Let me have to see that, but then you can see that the 6 buttons are there. It does not have any title there. So let me go back for the titles. So we have the background. Okay, not here. Funky button. Background color. Oh, missed out. Okay, so let's do that. Title, set title. And that will be the view model dot title for normal cases. So that's pretty much what we were looking for, setting the title. So let's enable the log. Beautiful. You have all the titles available now. When you start clicking on it, you see it starts showing the logs, but you're not seeing the subscription working yet, because the final idea is just populate or show this value here. That's not happening, but it has started hitting the tap event. So but then the whole final idea, let's implement that. Where's my title? Let's make it bold. I want to see it bold, condensed bold maybe. Yeah, That's it. And then go back. So what do we need to do? We need to subscribe to those changes. So let's go back to the view controller. So this is where the thing is happening. Let's subscribe to that. So for that, see the magic happening. Funky items, we have the array. Let's do a map on it. Map is just to transform your array to something else. So when we do a map here on the array, we can map it to the funky tab publish subject. So what happens now? You get an array of this funky tab publish subject, which is an array of observables. So what can you do with that? You can actually merge that using something called as, let's me do import RxSwift. We might need this to bind again. So RxCocoa, that's done. So you have this array now called funky publish observable array, because we transformed it. Observable array. So that's something like we mapped on this view model items array, and then we transformed it by choosing funky type publish subject. So whenever you map, it gets transformed. Your array gets transformed into a different array of the type that you have chosen. So that's what we have done. It gave you a funky publish observable array, which is nothing but an array of this publish subject which we had created, which will actually start sending the signals directly from the buttons, the funky buttons which we created. So let's do that. We have this array now. All we need to do is observable dot call a merge, which is asking for an observable array, a collection. That's all we need. We'll just pass this funky publish observable array. So that's done. Now all that we need to do is subscribe onto the tab events, which will send you, if you see, it is sending back a string. So each and every tab will start sending individual string, whichever element has subscribed to it. In this case, it's a view controller which is subscribing. So before that, let's do a simple thing. Let's do a map. So it's sending that whenever you map it, you will start receiving. What are we receiving here? It's a string. Map, transform it to a string type. So that's what you are receiving here. You receive it as a string. No, let's say I want to do an uppercase. So whatever I received, that string, I am doing an uppercase so that I receive it. So again, you are transforming it, and then all that you need then to do is to bind it to what? I want to bind it to my label which I have created here. So let me just call this bind.rx.text. So I'm binding this, whatever I am receiving, the string value, I'm making it uppercase and then binding it to my label. That's all. That's what I need to do to make my feature to work, which is whenever a tap happens, it needs to receive the view controller need to receive the signal from the buttons, the funky buttons which I created, and then show the title in the label which I had defined at the bottom. So that's the whole thing I'm trying to do here. Dispose bag, this is like a must have whenever you create observables. That's it. So let's line by line, observable dot gets merged. Whatever you receive, the funky items get mapped to an array of observable array, which is the tab publish subject, which I am passing to an observable.merge. And whatever tab value I received, I'm doing it an uppercase and then binding that observable to my label button. That's it. Let me just run and see what happens. Boom, it starts working. It's uppercase now. and it starts showing the tabs. So simply, so many less number of lines of code, and you are not doing much on the UI side. You look at the UI part, like what do you have here in a view controller? Nothing. For this to work, it's everything is like compartmentalized or even modularized in a way that you make it so funky. I'll call it funky because you have view models now which is testable, you have RxSwift which is bindable, and you're making a function like this look so simple. So let's assume that I have done it for buttons. In this case, you can extend it to, let's say, even some cases like table view, collection view. If you want to start receiving some tap events or some item selected events from a table view, then you have this approach. You can start experimenting there. That's a whole point I was trying to make. This is a simple example of how to use observable.merge using an array and then start receiving value. If you want to have a walkthrough, let me just go back once more where I started. I created a view controller. I have the main storyboard. I just added a stack view, and at the bottom I kept a label where whatever funky buttons I created gets configured in this stack view. And whenever you try to tap any of these buttons, this label will start receiving that tapped buttons title, and it starts displaying that here. Simple example, but approach being done using view models and RxSwift. So I guess this made sense to you. Maybe you can start experimenting, and you leave your comments in the comment section and let me know if it helped, or if you want more clarity, let me know, or if you want more kind of examples, then let me know for that too. And stay subscribed, because this is still a programming channel, and I'll be coming up with new kind of stuff as well, so don't miss out on those. So until the next time, see you. Bye.